Hi, everyone. Today we're going to be talking about how the government would implement policies and go about doing a mass deportation of illegal immigrants. We're going to be talking a little bit about the executive orders and legislation that's going to take, as well as identifying and locating the individuals, the detention and processing that goes with it, as well as the transportation and removal of the illegal immigrants.
For the federal government to implement mass deportation, they would have to enact specific policies or executive orders, pass new legislation to authorize the mass deportation. They will need to review and potentially amend current immigration laws and policies to allow for the broader enforcement approach. Immigration enforcement is subject to the judicial oversight, meaning that in large-scale deportation efforts, could be challenged in courts, especially if it contradicts existing legal protections for certain groups.
So, from what Cambridge just said, I'm going to be going into how federal government is trying to increase border security, and many right-wing proponents advocate for a more comprehensive approach to deportation, urging the federal government to adopt stricter laws for border control. This approach includes enhancing border security and with an emphasis on expanding technology such as surveillance towers, sensors, radars, and aerial assets. These measures are intended to bolster protection against the illicit movement of weapons, drugs, contraband, and human trafficking, while trying to promote a lawful and safe entry and exit at the border.
Yeah, so after identifying and locating the individuals, they would then have to go through detention processing. Current detention infrastructure would need expansion to accommodate a larger population. This might involve building new facilities or using temporary housing. Individuals would also need to go through immigration courts then, this could result in bottlenecks given the already backlogged system. Efforts to expedite the process might include limiting legal appeals, which could raise significant constitutional and human rights concerns.
Kind of tying into what Trinity just talked about, Trump proposes allocating military funds to build these holding facilities for the immigrants, which would be run by Homeland Security. This is where these immigrants would wait for their court cases to be completed and potentially be returned back to their home country. ICE, as a part of the U.S. Department of Homeland Security, would use databases and information sharing systems to target people for deportation. This information is passed on to state and local agencies who would be assisting ICE. Under Trump's proposed plan, a national state of emergency would be declared, and the U.S. military would be utilized to assist in the deportation.
All the efforts for mass deportation would face significant challenges, including legal and humanitarian concerns, public opposition, economic impact, and logistical hurdles. The policy would cause public fear, family separations, and disruption to industries reliant on undocumented workers. Additionally, mass deportation could strain diplomatic relations and require careful management of public messaging.
Yeah, I know I saw too that in my research that federal agencies would really need to engage more, or they might need to engage more with local governments and law enforcement to assist with these outrages that might have happen. I saw things saying that it could provoke protests and resistance from the public.
Yeah, and going back to what was said about people having to remain in their home country, I know Trump was wanting to implement something called the remain in Mexico, so that they had to remain at home while they were waiting for their immigration status here in the United States. But going back on everything that we just talked about, the mass deportation of immigrants by the federal government would include, like everybody said, multiple agencies. Your primary U.S. immigrations and customs enforcement, customs and borders, your local PD, your state PD, all of that. The process would begin to identify undocumented individuals, prioritizing those with criminal records and previous deportation orders. That were detained here in the United States. They'll undergo legal proceedings through the overwhelmed courts, and detention facilities could present challenges. Coordination with foreign governments would be required for repatriation. The operation would demand significant resources, including funding for transportation and expanded detention capacity. Such policy would likely face legal challenges, political opposition, and public protest. Um, but even with that, I feel like it could be handled by the US government. And as long as they have, the foreign governments that are helping in this, trying to keep all of our home countries safe, I think it could be done.
Agreed.
Yeah, I also saw that, large scale deportations could draw domestic and international criticism, especially concerning the treatment of families and vulnerable individuals. Many people would disagree with the ethical look of that.
Yeah, and I know they're also implementing a keep families together. So when families are going through um, deportation or coming into the United States illegally, waiting on their immigration status, if they have U.S. families, they can stay with them um, until they hear from the government. So that I think that is a pro, but also too we need to keep our borders safe and the U.S. a safe and free country.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, yeah, in conclusion, then, the government, it would take lots of legal activity and policies to implement such effects, and then take lots of look into the detention and identifying them and the transportation and removal of the illegal immigrants.